promises to be the best season in motor racing history.
A winning form that was to put him amongst the all-time greats of motor racing.
The most disastrous sight, and one which we have seen all too often.
This glossy annual of sexy girls, the 10th Pirelli calendar, and one of 5 model girls from Paris who went to the Seychelles Islands in the Indian Ocean in May.
Time, a few minutes before 3 o'clock, with a wildly excited crowd of 100,000 people. Surely one of the most colourful circuits in the world and one of the most demanding. This promises to be the best pipe opener of any season in motor racing history. There are no fewer than 16 new cars amongst the 23 starters. South African enthusiasts are on hand in thousands to see the world's top Formula One stars jet into the circuit at Kyalami. For them, it's the biggest event of the year. First drive in a racing car since his crippling crash in America last October seemed nothing short of miraculous. 6 tentative laps of Kyalami, a moment of truth for the man who many people reckoned would never drive again.
Obviously I felt pretty new and it felt a little bit strange, but I didn't feel that I was too far out, you know, I didn't feel completely out of touch.
Having a little trouble stopping the car, you know, my leg isn't strong enough to work the old brake too well, and so I'm having to brake fairly early, which is a bit of a disadvantage.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem to be getting too tired, and so as is the first one of the season and the one I've been aiming at, I thought I'd have a go.
Into the straight and past the pits, a blur at nearly 180 miles an hour. At the end of a long day, Graham Hill was still going strong, but the last lap belonged to Jack Brabham. This really was the race that must fortify the over 40s, for not only did Jack Brabham win it, but Graham Hill, the man who we didn't think would probably be racing until October, finished 6th and earned the World Championship point.
Well, I was delighted to come 6th place. I think it's probably the hardest 1 point I think I've ever earned.
For Jack Brabham, adulation. For others, a sad trip back to the drawing board. But for spectators, surely a mere hors d'oeuvre for what promises to be one of the most richly spiced Grand Prix seasons in history.
Happy birthday to you, happy birthday dear Jochen, happy birthday to you.
Jochen Rindt, 28, on the day before the race, celebrated by putting up his fastest time in the brand new Lotus 72. Colin Chapman's latest car has a completely redesigned front end, wedge-shaped for minimum wind resistance.
Well, it needs a bit sorting, but I'm very, very confident and I'm sure this car will be very, very good.
to the hairpin, there they go, and there's a slow car there, and Brabham's gone straight on. Brabham's run out of road. Brabham's run out of road, and Rindt has it. Brabham goes straight on at the hairpin, and Jochen Rindt for Lotus wins the Monaco Grand Prix.
It was the Austrian driver's first of 5 championship wins. Rindt went on to take the Dutch, French and British Grand Prix and was leading Brabham by 9 points when the 8th round was held at Hockenheim in West Germany. A crowd of more than 100,000 saw Rindt in his Lotus Ford number 2 take an early lead. Jackie Heeks challenged him all the way, but Rindt drove with great determination to win by 7/10 of a second.
So that was 1970. In Grand Prix racing, Jochen Rindt became world champion, but died at Monza before he could collect the winner's crown. In 1971, motorsport could have a new ideal: how to make the racing safer, how to take the bitter taste out of the magnums of champagne.
The Dorchester in London's West End on a night of glitter and glamour and all the big names in Grand Prix. And yet, surprisingly enough, tonight the Grand Prix drivers are not the stars. This is their wives' night, the 4th annual Doghouse Ball. Now, racing drivers' wives are people we just see draped on their arm or sitting with stopwatches in the pits. We often envy them. There must be a million women who wish they were married to Graham Hill or Jackie Stewart. But they're also described as some of the bravest women in the world. What is it really like to be married to a man whose job can be a very final one indeed? Few people are better qualified to talk about the life of a Grand Prix wife, Mrs. Betty Hill. You've obviously said it can never happen to me, but how do you come to terms with this day after day after day?
Well, it is difficult, isn't it? I don't honestly think about it. When Graham had his accident in America, it took me a long time to realize that Graham, who I thought was someone who had a special God looking over him, and he'd had incidents and he'd damaged his neck, but he'd never had a really serious accident. And it took a long while for me to believe that he was in fact very seriously injured, because I had made myself believe that nothing on God's earth would ever touch him.
But at the start of the season at Silverstone in May came near disaster. The throttle jammed open and a lucky escape. But we wondered how this setback might affect Jackie Stewart. 2 weeks later at the Monaco Grand Prix, we saw the answer, the winning form that was to take him through a triumphant season. It seemed that the old engine and the new car, plus Jackie's ability and determination, could see off the best of the opposition. But unlike Monaco, Silverstone is a fast circuit. For the Ferraris and Joseph Expiarian, this, the British Grand Prix, was to be the turning point. And on the 4th lap, once again, Jackie slipped into the lead on the 170-mile-an-hour approach to Stone. As at Monaco and subsequently in the French, German and Canadian Grand Prix, once in the lead, there was no one to touch him. His 6 Grand Prix victories, won in the World Championship for the 2nd time, and puts the name of Jackie Stewart firmly amongst the all-time greats of motor racing.
I've seen dreadful accidents, but I never forget one at Brands Hatch when a race I had won the World Championship. And this was for my victory in the World Championship to sort of honour it, and they put this special race on. And Joe Seifert was killed in it, and it was a terrible accident.
And here, the most disastrous sight that you can see on any circuit, and one which we have seen all too often. It's on the approach to the very fast Hawthorns Bend, 115 mile an hour or so right-hander, cars creeping through on the inside of the fire, fuel all across the road, and we know that it is Joe Seifert's BRM which has crashed. No sign of panic, the firefighters closing to the seat of the fire as best they may. The race is stopped.
And I'll never forget getting out of my racing car, having gone up to the crash, seeing that there was nothing to be done, and walked back to my car, and then, you know, being just totally restless and not knowing where to go or what to do. And I walked back up the track, and I'll never forget a man who had obviously seen the accident come running over to the fence in tears, I mean really in tears, pleading with me to retire from motor racing, that he had seen this accident. Now, I'm sure that man still goes to motor races, but I'm sure at that time he was so disgusted and so shocked by what he had seen that he just needed to communicate. He knew it was my day, so to speak. I have to recognize there are dangers involved and therefore try and get round them as well as I possibly can.
But could these deaths have been avoided then? Is this what you're saying, that there's in the most of these cases there was something that could have been done to prevent them?
Almost in every case.
Really?
Almost in every case. This is one of the tragedies, as far as I'm concerned, about our sport. It's rather immature in its thinking when it comes to things like this, and it's very naive of it also to think that it can go on without anything being done to stop this. It's rather like the ostrich burying its head in the sand. It doesn't want to see it.
And here, with 4 hours gone, we see Graham Hill leading the 24-hour race of Le Mans in the Matra Simca. A clear lead, driving a superbly cool, calm race, obviously enjoying it, and proving that the Anglo-Saxons can take over what is this year a special Gallic event. Lapping the back markers is always a problem. The speed differential is enormous, but Hill, of course, is used to this sort of thing. He's probably the most experienced driver in the race, and thoroughly enjoying this experience.
You always enjoy the atmosphere at Le Mans. It's something different, something that you don't get anywhere else. And of course, but in the early hours of the morning, I can't really say that I really was enjoying it. You know, I mean, you're short of sleep, and you know, there's all the noise, and you think, "God, blimey, what are you doing here?" You know.
And here he is, the first Frenchman to win Le Mans since Rosier did it in 1950 in a Tolbo. 2 French cars, 2 great French drivers, and there goes the flag. And there's Sever applauding his teammate. Superb drive by Henri Pescarolo, and of course his co-driver Hill, and by Sever. So champagne in huge quantities for the common market pair, Pescarolo and Hill, who've covered nearly 2,800 miles at an average of over 121 miles an hour.
So at 4 o'clock that Sunday afternoon in June, Graham Hill became the first man ever to have won the 24-hour race at Le Mans, the Grand Prix World Championship, and the Indianapolis 500.
Just have a look at April, just have a look at those eyes. If ever there was a challenge, it was there. And what about May? Well, the boys here, and I include all the wheelbase cameramen, think that this is perhaps one of the sexiest pictures that Pirelli have ever produced. And what about June? What man could really resist taking on that somewhat steely but determined challenge? And you'll note no bare flesh on any of those pictures, but September compensates. We can see what the good points of September are, and doesn't she enjoy life? Well, that's our opinion. But of course, that's only one man saying what turns him on. There are many other people here. Let's see what turns them on. Pirelli, of course, say that it's a very important marketing weapon. Have you at British Leyland ever thought of producing a calendar?
Well, there was some years ago a series known as the Leyland Ladies, which I think at least rivaled the Pirelli Ladies.
We find ourselves once again with the Minister of Transport Industries, Mr. John Payton, but unlike last week, on a lighter matter. What do you think of the new Pirelli calendar, sir?
Well, it's striking as always. I believe they now have a great intrinsic value.
My name is Graham Hill, and that's me there, getting ready to do something that I've never done before. Drive my own racing car. Graham Hill's Shadow is my car, and Shadow is the name of the car. There's one absolute factor that governs everything you do. Time. We're battling against time. All the performance we're getting into the car, everything we're doing, everything is aimed at saving time on the racetrack. And by saving time, I mean fifths of a second.
Listen to the wind blow, watch the sun rise. Run in the shadows, damn your love, damn your life.
It's a bit tight. These long comms you see me putting on is a material that's been was devised by the space program in America, and it's fire resistant. It's not fireproof, very little is fireproof, but it doesn't support combustion and will prevent the heat getting through to you. In fact, all this will give you about 30 seconds.
So we think that this is going to give you between 35 and 45 seconds escape time in an all-enveloping fire. That was the test that we carried out with the guy walking through some flames.
Yeah. What's his name, that bloke?
Nicky Hobbs. Yeah, he's a stuntman.
Ready, Graham?
Yep.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire.
This all-enveloping helmet helps. And here we have a new invention which is going to supply compressed air into the helmet in the event of fire.
To breathe comfortably if you're trying to get out of the car. It's not unpleasant in any way.
So it's just going up my nostrils.
My main criticism of this car, as of every three-wheeler I've ever driven, is just one of stability. With three wheels, you just don't get the sort of stability you get with four. It's just mathematically impossible. And when you're bundling along at a fairly healthy sort of rate and you tip the car into a corner, you just wonder whether you're going to lift a wheel, which you can do quite easily, or even worse than that, turn the whole lot over. Well, it's jolly difficult to turn over, but I would rather feel myself that it was a bit more difficult than it possibly is.
Stewart took him under the bridge, and Jackie Stewart leads the 1973 Belgian Grand Prix at the start of lap 25. Stewart takes the flag. Stewart takes the flag to win the first Belgian Grand Prix ever held at Zolder and to give himself 28 points in the championship. And there's the saddest side of all, Graham Hill in the Embassy Hall on which he's worked so hard, sitting there, the man who's racing in his 149th Grand Prix.
There comes Jackie Stewart out of the tunnel into the chicane for the last time, safely through that. Now through the Tabac, the new Tabac at 85 miles an hour. Then those tricky S's for the last time. And can Wilson, Emerson close up the gap? There are less than 2 seconds in it now. And they're on the last lap. There's still the hairpin ahead. And there's the exit from the approach to it, and there go the two cars with only about 2 lengths in it as they come out of the hairpin for the last time, and Jackie Stewart comes screaming up to take the checkered flag.
In Britain now, thanks to the GPDA and Louis Stanley and Denny Holm and Jackie Stewart, that it is much, much safer. I don't think this thing could possibly happen in Britain or in Germany for that fact. At Brands Hatch, as an example, every 20 metres you have a chap in full fireproof gear, thick asbestos suit, visor and a helmet with a 20 kilo dry powder charge. And if there's a crash, everybody just converges on the spot and you've got a chance of getting it out.
Jackie Stewart's 27th Grand Prix victory in the German Grand Prix from his teammate Francois Seven.
This year has had its high moments as it's also had its sad moments. Now, I wouldn't change anything bar for just 2 or 3 things in 1973, and of course the most important of all has been the loss of Francois. This has come at a very difficult time for all of us. I hope that I'll be able to do things for the sport, for its foundations, for its security.
Formula Finesse is the same system of driving as I used to drive racing cars. So we take off from the line as smoothly and as cleanly as we can. We go into this first corner, we get it round, keeping the ball very much in the dish. Now, of course, it's not a speed event. We're only doing 10 miles an hour, but you've got to be very smooth and clean in every movement. Now, if we can just plant a grain in the mind of the British motorists throughout this national campaign, I believe we're going to do some social service and create better, safer and more economic driving.
Where you go with it is just where the birds go. You go King's Road on the front of the swinging scene. And really, as long as you can see her knickers when she gets into it, that's about beach buggies. Well, what's the future of the beach buggy? In a nutshell, it's here surrounding me. It's fine for sport as long as you know the sort of sport it's fine for.
1973 marked not only a fuel crisis, but also perhaps the end of an era in which British and Commonwealth drivers have dominated the World Championship. As of now, things may be different, and we can no longer be sure that British drivers are going to dominate the races of 1974, as they have done pretty well every year since the days of Moss and Hawthorne and Collins and Brooks in the 50s.
It was late last night when Hill's own Piper Aztec smashed into a screen of trees and burst into flames. The crash on the edge of Arkley Golf Course virtually wiped out the Embassy Hill racing team, including 2 drivers and the manager. But from the start, there was little doubt that Britain had lost one of its greatest racing personalities.
People tell me